Jeffrey, you have anything you want to say before we get started?
No, I mean, I think the coverage of me by CNN today has been very fair. I mean, I have no quarrels with it. I've had every opportunity to speak up and present my point of view. We disagree. I mean,
all right.
You know, beyond that.
All right, let's play it then. Here's what you said earlier this morning on CNN about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and about President Trump, a comparison. Here it is.
I want to say something here that I know will probably drive Simone crazy, but think of President Trump as the Martin Luther King of healthcare.
Oh, Jeffrey.
When I was a kid, President Kennedy did not want to introduce the Civil Rights Bill because he said it wasn't popular, he didn't have the votes for it, etc. Dr. King kept putting people in the streets in harm's way to put the pressure on so that the bill would be introduced. That's what
Jeffrey,
finally
you do
worked.
understand that Dr. King was marching for civil rights because people that look like me were being beaten. Dogs were being sicked on them. Basic human rights were being withheld from these people merely because of the color of their skin. So let's not equate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a humanitarian, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, to the vagina-grabbing President Donald Trump.
Wow.
Never forget. Never forget.
Okay, listen, that was morning TV. So, Simone, you know, hey, I got to commend you. Did you understand, Jeffrey, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a civil rights hero? Did you realize what you were saying there?
Sure, because Dr. King is a hero of mine and has been since I was a kid. Don, look, I use Dr. King. Let me go to other races. Let's go with Gandhi, Dr. King's hero. Let's go to Senator Eugene McCarthy or Tom Hayden on the Vietnam War, who used the same tactic, at least Tom Hayden did, of shutting down things to draw attention to the Vietnam War. It is a tactic. It is a colorless strategy that was used very effectively by Dr. King for civil rights, by Gandhi to get independence from India, by Vietnam protesters, of which I was once one for a bit, in the 1960s and 70s to end the Vietnam War.
Jeffrey,
it is a colorless
Jeffrey, that's a reach. I mean, and you do remember.
No, it is not a reach.
You do remember 2 days ago what happened with Sean Spicer with a very ill thought out comparison as well. Some things you just some comparisons you just don't make.
Exactly. Dr. King wanted to shut things down to draw attention to the lack of civil rights. He was right to do so. I believed it then. I believe it passionately now. He was
I think
right.
you're very ill-informed.
So, Don,
Jeffrey.
I've talked a lot about on CNN about the importance of protest, and protest is designed to make people uncomfortable. So the way Jeffrey talks about the tactics, quote unquote, that Dr. King and other civil rights leaders used, it really does not capture everything that was going on. People were putting their bodies and their lives on the line because their right to exist was being threatened, was being threatened. And so what you did though this morning, Jeffrey, so you equated people literally putting their lives on the line for basic human rights, civil rights, health. You equated that to what Donald Trump is doing in terms of talking about withholding health care for millions of people and letting it collapse in an attempt to get his way to serve his political leanings.
Do you think Dr. King, Jeffrey, would agree with taking health care away from 20 or so odd million people?
I think if Dr. King talked to some of the people I have who've lost family members to Obamacare, that he might agree with them.
You know what? Let me tell you something really quick. My father passed away a month ago Saturday. He had a stroke, and he received excellent care up until his last breath because we had coverage. There are millions of people across this country who depend on this life-saving coverage of the Affordable Care Act. My mother, she has cancer. She is a cancer survivor because of programs like the mammogram programs that exist at Planned Parenthood, where folks can go in and catch it in stage 1 and before it takes their lives. We are playing with people's lives here. And what happens? No, we are playing with people's lives here. And what happens when people like Donald Trump, when folks like you try to minimize it, try to politicize it. It is horrible and it is wrong.
Not minimizing anything.
Healthcare is damn important in this country. Republicans, Democrats, and independents, I think they all agree. No one is going to tell you Obamacare is perfect. Things need to be changed. But we have to build on the success. People have to be willing to come to the table. But we cannot play with people's lives here, and that is exactly what's happening right here, right now on this program.
Absolutely not. I mean, you're making this all up from, you know, there's example after example. This is a strategy.
Did you take in mind,
Congress
when you made those
negotiate.
comments, Jeffrey, did you take in mind that there are people out there that Simone who feel like Simone, who are living with this every day, people who would be insulted by a comparison, quite frankly, to someone who said he had, at will, can grab people by the genitals or women, to make that comparison
but I didn't
to
do that, Don.
You
Don,
did, Jeffrey. I
didn't do
mean,
that.
we're all listening. We all have ears. And listen, you're a nice enough man, but I don't think
compared
you
the
understand the comparison that you were making.
I compared the strategy, Don. I compared the strategy. President Kennedy.
Was
it
it necessary? Was it necessary to make that comparison? Because you can compare a lot of people, just like Sean Spicer did when he compared, when he made the Hitler comparison. But was it necessary, Jeffrey? Do you understand? Was it necessary? You think it was necessary? You couldn't have made your point by doing something else.
It's a tactic. It's a tactic. It's a colorblind tactic. Strategy.
We don't live in a colorblind society, but go on. Go ahead.
If I may, because this conversation is...
Wasn't it? That's what I'm working for every day.
This conversation is amazing, and my heart goes out to Simone and her family, and my prayers are with them every single day, just like they are with most Americans who are going through trials and tribulations that many people can't imagine. But the fact is, as I quoted earlier, I have to quote again, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, of all forms of inequality, injustice, and health is the most shocking and inhumane. So I think that but you can't just talk about Dr. King and whitewash him and eliminate the context. And that is what we're talking to you about, Jeffrey. You can't say it's the same tactic, but one was talking about taking away health care and one was talking about making sure that black citizens had equality under the law. You can't look at this in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And even more importantly, I mean, I think that the level of political discourse that we have, and whether or not it comes from you or whether or not it comes from Sean Spicer or the President of the United States, is extremely low in this country right now. And that is the trouble that many people have. Many people are aghast by the fact that you can make a comparison between Donald Trump and Martin Luther King Jr., something that's unfounded or...
How many times you set up the straw man? I did not do that.
Okay, Jeffrey.
You did.
Jeffrey, let me ask you something. You have 3 people you work with, right? You work with Bakari, you work with me, you work with Simone. 3 people of color.
And Selena.
No.
Let me get the point out. Let me get the point out. We are telling you that comparison was insulting, and you're ignoring it. Don't you think you should take that into consideration, whether or not you're trying to make a point or not, even if it's to the point that if I offended you, I'm sorry?
Don, when I lived as a teenager in the South and my dad lost his job standing up for a black waitress.
You're not answering my question now. You're not answering my question in the moment.
I am answering
Don't
your
take me
question,
back
Don.
to some
I
before
am
the war
answering your
crap. I want to hear what you're saying to the coworkers you work with now, Jeffrey. Answer the question now. I don't want to hear about stuff from 50 damn years ago. I want to hear now to the coworkers, to the people of color you work with on this network every single day who are offended by your remark. You're not listening to us.
Like Bull Connor, Don. Come on. This isn't right. This is not moral. We don't judge people by color in this country. That is racist. It's wrong.
Let me tell you
you're
something.
crazy if you think we don't judge people by color in this country. You're living in
every single day I walk out of my house, I am a black woman, Jeffrey. I don't have the luxury of saying I don't see color. Every single day I walk out of my house, someone sees me as a black woman. Regardless of how I see myself, I am a black woman. Don is a black man. Bakari is a black man. You have the luxury of walking out of the house and just being an American.
You don't have to think about it.
You do not have to think about it. And that, my friend, is a position of privilege. And when you have the opportunity to hear from the other side, to listen, to have a real dialogue, you should take it.
So Simone and Jeffrey, I think this is the conversation this is the gap in America that we have today. Because there's so many people who have these racial blind spots. Jeffrey it genuinely does not believe that anything he said this morning was incorrect, disingenuous, wrong, or harmful. That is a problem, and if you can't have that empathy for someone who just literally told you that their father died, or I told you my father was shot, or Don is, we have two black personalities on late night TV, and one of them is telling you he's offended by it, sitting here before you. If you can't understand.
My panel, Selena, you haven't had a chance to speak. What do you think of this conversation?
Well, you know, as a child of the 60s who grew up with the civil rights movement that played out right in front of my front yard, from the kids I went to school with to the preacher who lived across the street from my family, who's very involved with the movement, I struggle very much to see the comparison between the tactics of the civil rights movement and the tactics of President Trump with the healthcare movement. With all due respect, Jeffrey, the civil rights movement, like great movements in this country that had results, women's suffrage, the civil rights, or the Civil War, the American Revolution, these were brought up through churches and through activism, and they were about making people's lives safer and better. And what Mr. Trump is doing on health care is a boardroom tactic. It's smart, it's politics, but I don't see the comparison at all.
Jeffrey, I'll give you the last word on this.
I see the comparison with everything you've said. The American Revolution stopped the British government in its tracks. It upended things. Think the Boston Tea Party. So too the Civil War. So too did countless other movements. That was the point. That is the objective. This strategy is an old one. Dr. King used it. He wasn't the first. He's not going to be the last. He hasn't been the last. People in the pro-life movement try and use this by shutting down abortion clinics. I mean, what the objective is to just so disrupt that you get the other side to negotiate to an agreement. That's the objective of the strategy, no matter
Jeffrey,
who uses it.
You haven't listened to anything we said.
Don, you're talking liberal to me. That's what you're doing.
No, I'm talking
No, he's
real.
talking
This is
human,
real. I'm
and
talking
you're not
human.
listening.
You're going to sit here on television and tell us that you don't notice the color. I notice the color of your hair. I notice when someone has red hair. I know you have white hair.
Don,
I know
yeah, but
Simone is
I don't
wearing. I know Simone is wearing
don't
white.
judge
I know I'm
people.
wearing blue. It's insulting when you are stating
Don,
something
Don.
that is not in reality. And we're sitting here
Don,
as
you
people.
have to make it
You're
reality.
not. Will you let me
That's
finish?
what Dr.
Jeffrey,
King was
I'm talking
about,
to you. Will you
taking
let
the
me finish?
impossible and making it possible.
Okay.
This
Dr. King
denial of
means
Dr. King
Dr.
is-
King
I
means
find
something
terrible.
different to the people who are sitting here than he meant to you. He wasn't just a tactic for us. He's a real person who helped me to be able to get here, and Simone to be able to sit here,
Yes.
and for Bakari to be able to
Exactly.
sit here, and Selena, and for you to come on and
Yes.
give some reckless comparison to his
It's
work
not
and his
reckless.
legacy.
It is Dr. King's views.
Good night.
You should not be judged by the color of your skin,
Good
but
night.
by
We're
the
done.
content
Good
of
night. We're done.